Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Minimalist Podcast, where we discuss what it means to live a meaningful life with less. My name is Joshua Fields Milburn. Ryan Nicodemus is on vacation, but don't worry, he's going to be joining us by phone later in this episode. And I'm here with Alabama.
Hi, everybody.
TK Coleman is here.
Hey.
Welcome to the podcast, y'all. We got the rest of our team in the studio as well. Coming up today on this free public minimal episode, we'll be joined by Ryan Nicodemus, and also later in the episode for the lightning round, we're joined by YouTuber and musician Ruslan to argue about, well, a few things. We're going to talk about judgment. We're going to talk about judgment as emotional clutter. We've got a great added value segment for you as well, a great listener tip, and so much more. You can check out the full 3-hour maximal edition of episode 356, where we answer 4 times the questions and we dive deep into 7 different simple living segments. That private podcast episode is out right now at patreon.com/theminimalists. Your support keeps our podcast and YouTube channel 100% advertisement free, because advertisements suck. Alabama, where'd you like to start today?
Our first question today is from Danielle in Australia.
I'm currently a nanny to 3 girls ages 6 to 8 years old, and I'm wanting to implement an idea I learned from your podcast, that they can have control and can choose how they react to situations, and that they are the only ones who can make themselves feel anything, whether it's happiness, offense, anger, sadness, jealousy, etc. I'd love to hear the experiences of those who are successfully implementing this and see what it would look and sound like.
So Danielle, I just yell at my daughter and say, only you can make yourself happy. Only you can make yourself upset.
That's brilliant.
How dare you think I'm upsetting you right now?
You make me so mad when you think that, girl.
Ryan, what's fascinating is you and I have been going down this road for a while, and it's something that even as 40-year-olds, it's something really hard to grasp, because I have built up this pattern of blaming other people for my own emotions, my own emotional clutter. And here's what I'll say first off. Here's a truth that I want to unpack. Emotions are great airplane passengers, but horrible pilots. And here's what I mean by that. So we often think, because what we're saying here is like, well, anger, only you can make yourself angry. You can make yourself upset. And therefore, people think what I'm saying is, well, it's bad to be angry. You should never want to be angry. You should never be angry, TK. Ryan, you should never be upset. That's not what we're saying. What we're saying is, this airplane is full of emotions, right? But I don't want to let them in the cockpit. I don't want my anger to steer me toward rage. I don't want my disappointment to steer me toward judgment of someone else.
Right on.
Yeah.
Mr. Ryan, come on, man.
I was just agreeing with Josh. I mean, if I was to say, I would just say, yeah, it's like, so that's wonderful. I love it. I think that's a great sentiment for people to, look at when they're thinking about emotions, especially the negative ones, right? Because those are the ones that we act out most with. But how do you help a 6, 7, or 8-year-old comprehend that hey, those emotions are really nice passengers in your airplane, but they don't allow them to fly your life. But it's interesting though, Josh, because you don't yell at Ella. Obviously, that was a joke earlier. But this is the philosophy, that you live by. So you're setting this amazing, example for Ella, and she sees how you react to different emotions. And I think that's really where it starts, especially, man, like with kids, like when they're younger. So as infants, they can't comprehend anything. So they're just like, little emotional reaction machines. And so it's really up to us as the parent. By the way, I have no kids, so it's so easy for me to give advice to parents. But it's our job, as the parent to set that example for how we react to our children's out of control emotions. And then eventually it gets to a point where, I think probably 6, 7, 8-year-old is an appropriate time to start helping these kids unpack their emotions and help and talk them through it. Hey, why do you feel that way? What does it make you feel? What does that feeling make you want to do? Doing that, is that an appropriate reaction? Like, what if I reacted that way? And like really helping them unpack that. But going back to what I was saying in the beginning, if the parent or the nanny in this case hasn't set that example in the first 6 or 7, 8 years, they're going to have to start with themselves first. And that is when they can, start to maybe have that conversation with those kids.
We also often set the opposite example. And that's why, Ryan, when I talk to you about as 40-year-olds, we have all this baggage we've carried onto that plane, to extend my metaphor and now mix metaphors. We're on that plane with all these emotions. And the reason that I often say that person made me mad is I want to assume the role of the victim. And it's not to say that there isn't a such thing as being victimized. I certainly have been victimized. But then how I respond to that, well, quite often it has to do with my cultural programming. And I've been programmed to blame, because in order for me to be right, someone else has to be wrong. They have to be incorrect. But for a kid, what we're often doing is we're showing them how to blame other people. And when we show other people how to blame, we show kids how to blame other people, then they are going to pick up that baggage and carry it onto the airplane with you.
That's right.
Yeah.
If the destination is self-discovery, then our emotions can be our greatest guide, because then you can afford to walk with them. You can afford to sit next to them, talk with them, spend some time with them. But the effort to try to talk someone out of an emotion just reinforces the idea that what you feel is the problem. But the feeling is never the problem. It's not the fact that you're angry. It's your anger plus the idea that the best way to resolve this anger is to punch you in the face. Your jealousy is not the problem. It's the jealousy plus the best way to deal with this jealousy is to steal your stuff or to outcompete you. And so what we do is what Ryan said, we talk our children through their feelings. We treat their feelings as if it's worth giving our attention to in a healthy way by saying, hey, man, why are you so angry right now? What are you angry about? We don't condemn them. We don't make them feel like our goal is to get you to stop feeling as angry as soon as possible, right? It's like, what are you angry about? What is it about that makes you angry? Yeah. What does that make you want to do? And the process of calming down usually is an automatic response from just having the opportunity to be heard, right? And that's where we get the opportunity to help our children learn how to channel that emotional energy in a constructive direction. Because as it's often been said, emotion is just energy in motion. And it's the way in which we direct it that determines the result.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. I was when we were in Australia, Josh, we're getting on a Qantas flight, and I'll never fly them again. I'm sure other people have had lovely experiences with them, but I have not. But a long story short, I was talking to the gate agent and I had a complaint, and I was being real nice and courteous. And I said, it must be tough having to deal with all these customer complaints. And she said to me, she goes, well, each customer gets to decide how they react. And I thought, well, she's not wrong there. Like that's a pretty good observation. So, I mean, really, yeah. I mean, if I had a pithy answer to give to this, I would, I'd say something along the lines of, we can't control our emotions. We can control only how we react to them. Yeah.
If I were to pin that at all, I would simply talk about the judgments that we make based on those emotions. We're going to be talking to the YouTuber and musician Ruslan later, and he made a video about the minimalists and our judgments of other people. And at the time, what did I want to do? I wanted to judge him back. And what I realized here is, oh no, this isn't an opportunity for me to judge him. It's an opportunity for me to better understand him. So I invited him to come on the podcast, and we had a loving, strongly disagreeing conversation, but we did so in a way that I felt was productive. And if we map that onto our children, okay, the questions TK is asking about, well, tell me about that anger. Tell me about that sadness. Tell me about why you're upset. And as soon as they start steering it toward blame, okay, why is that person responsible? And helping them understand, not through telling, not through instructing, not through being didactic, but through questioning, exploring together. All of a sudden, it opens up the world. That's what makes room for love, because we can look at judgment and we can say, oh, yeah, you're acting angrily, so you're lashing out, you're blaming someone else, you're judging them for their behavior, and you're saying that's who that person is. That person always makes me mad. That person always makes me upset. That person always makes me cry. Okay, these things might be true technically, but ultimately how we're responding to that person is, well, how we're responding to them allows us, opens up the world of possibilities to stop being upset, to move away from that upset into that place of understanding.
Imagine.
Yes,
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Ryan.
Oh, yeah. No, I was just going to say, and speaking of judgment, there was a poll on Twitter where our audience judged our hair. I don't want to talk about the results.
Oh, he would. He would.
But there were some very clear judgments on that poll. I just want to say,
Ryan, there's a whole stack of ballots that are missing in Arizona. You know what I was going to do today because you're not in because you're not in the studio. We used to have that cardboard cutout of us. That tour that got canceled back in 2020 for some reason.
Yeah.
Why did we cancel tours in 2020?
I don't know.
Anyway, we had a cardboard cutout of us. We were sending to each city, and people were going to take photos at prominent landmarks. And we unfortunately decluttered that. We didn't amass it. We trashed it. And I was going to have a cardboard cutout of you here in the studio because the people on the Patreon live stream have been really brutal. They're like, you guys can't even get Ryan to phone it in. And now literally he's phoning it in.
Exactly.
TK, you want to have the last word on this question?
All right. I was just going to say, imagine that it were somehow possible for you to reach adulthood without anyone having taught you what your sensation of hunger meant. And you felt hungry. What would you do? First, you'd experience that pain, discomfort, tension, whatever you call it, that we use the label hunger to describe. And because you wouldn't know what hunger was for, you might just react in a bunch of unhealthy ways. You might bang your head against a wall. You might start yelling at people, screaming at them. You might start running around hoping that the feeling goes away. You might try to ignore it. You might grab the first thing that you can find and try to eat it, even if it's poison ivy.
Mm.
If you don't know what a thing is for, then abuse will be inevitable, right?
Mm.
But the problem isn't hunger. Your sensation of hunger is a good thing that's there to help you survive and thrive, but you need to be taught what it's there for. It's the same with our feelings, whether it's anger, sadness, all of those emotions have something to teach us. And just like hunger, if no one shows us what it's for, then we're bound to react and respond to that in a way that's self-destructive. But once you show someone, hey, look, that sensation you feel, that's part of what it means to be alive. Here's the healthy response to have when you feel it, because there are things you can do in response to that sensation that might harm you. But here are the options that you have for what's healthy, what's constructive.
That's beautiful. Ryan,
Man, I'm so glad TK's with us.
Likewise. Ryan's going to stick around for a few more questions on the private podcast. Danielle, thank you for your question. I'm going to send you a copy of our first film. It's called Minimalism, a documentary about the important things. You can find it at minimalismfilm.com. We recently removed it from Netflix, and it's available with 6 hours. 6 hours. And Danielle will send you the 6 hours of bonus interviews as well. Beautiful film, 79 minutes, but we had all these other interviews, and not all of them could make the film. So you can find it over at minimalismfilm.com. You can also check it out on iTunes or Amazon, where you can rent it or purchase it as well. But Danielle, we'll send you a copy of that. Really, it's a story that, well, there's several different stories that interweave this whole thing. And here's one thing I realized, Ryan, while I've got you on the phone, is quite often when we get angry at someone, it's usually through a screen. It makes it really easy to get angry if there's a screen between us, meaning you're 1,000 miles away, 100 miles away, or on the other side of town. You're texting me and you're not responding the way I want you to respond. But when we are right here, and that's why I had Ruslan on later in the episode, you realize when you hug someone, it breaks down all the barriers. And you see so many hugs in that first film because what we were doing, we were out on the road, and we still do this now. I met someone at a coffee shop yesterday. He said, "Oh my God, you're that one guy from the Minimalists." And I said, "Give me a hug, man." He goes, "Oh, that would be so nice." And we're starved for that. And so we can disagree, but we can also hug it out. before and after. You'll see a whole lot of that in our first documentary, Minimalism, minimalismfilm.com.
Man, I almost want to say the 6 hours of extended footage is better than the movie itself.
It allows you to...
There's so many good interviews in that. It's amazing.
Yeah. I mean, Matt did just a brilliant job weaving it all together. But if you want to dive deeper, you can certainly find it over at minimalismfilm.com. So it is time for our lightning round. This is where we answer your text messages. You can text your questions at 937-202-4654. Now, Ruslan, during the lightning round, this is where we do our best to answer questions with a short, shareable, less than 140 character response.
Okay.
But not really. We just ramble on a bit. And eventually, Podcast Sean, he tweezes out something pithy. We call them minimal maxims, which we can share in the show notes. So during this lightning round, we're going to disagree a bit, but I'm hoping that we can disagree in a way where we end up finding common ground. Our lightning round question today is from Mike.
What ways have you dealt with judgment from people close to you and your family? It always feels like the closer the person, the harder to handle.
That sounds true to me. That if someone I don't know is down the street judging me right now, I don't think anything of it, right? But if TK has some sort of judgment about me, I'm going to pause. And so the reason I thought this question was appropriate, and my pithy answer to the question is, judgment is a mirror that reflects the insecurities of the judge. And Ruslan, you made a video recently about Kendrick Lamar's new album. And I left that comment. And you made a video responding to it about judgment. Mm-hmm. And I think there was a misunderstanding there. And I want to apologize, first off, because there was a lack of clarity there. Because I wasn't saying that judgment is bad. I was simply making a statement about judgment. It is true that I make judgments every day of my life, right? But whenever I'm making a judgment about TK or about my wife, I'm holding up a mirror and looking at my own insecurities about that situation. So I'm trying to figure out where do we disagree there?
So you said when your judgment is a mirror of your own insecurities.
Yeah, reflects the insecurities of the judge. Which, if I'm judging, then I'm the judge in that scenario, yes.
Yes. So I think I would disagree in the sense that if my wife tells me, hey, bud, you're gaining a little weight and you're getting a little muffin top there. And we value fitness. And I've been hitting my wife's going through this whole fitness thing. She's crushing it right now. And she's doing really well. So if she's holding me accountable, or she's judging me, or she's like, dude, like, you can't have cookies at night. Like, you're not having sugar. Like, I don't think that's a insecurity of her. I actually think that judgment, which may sting in the moment, and it may tell me I have to delay gratification or I have to not eat what I want to eat, may sting. It may be like, oh, that doesn't feel good. But I actually believe it's coming from a good and sincere place to hold me accountable to the very same things that I said I value.
It sounds like what you're saying, that judgment is really the application of critical thought to any situation.
I would say so.
Yeah, it's evaluating. It's not necessarily expressing an insecurity. All right.
Yeah. And so, TK, you and I have had these discussions previously about the difference between description and prescription. Maybe you can talk to me a bit about that.
Yeah. So description is when you simply give an account or an explanation for what something is, right? If I say working out is when you push yourself outside of a comfort zone in order to develop strength or endurance. A prescription is when I make a claim about what you should or shouldn't do. There's kind of a value judgment. If I give a description of working out, I'm not saying that you should or shouldn't do it. I may think working out is bad. I may think working out is good, but I'm just giving a description. And it's the impression I got when you made this statement about judging is that you were giving a description of what you think judgment is.
That's right.
You weren't giving a prescription saying, hey, therefore no one should judge, because you admit that's something that I do, and it's also a necessary part of life.
Yeah, that's what Jesus said, not me. But the thing that's fascinating here because I am not telling, there's no prescription here. I'm trying to describe a particular truth. And I feel that, Ruslan, what I saw in your video is maybe just a misunderstanding of what I was trying to communicate. And that's why I apologize, because I was simply trying to describe that judgment is a mirror. But I wasn't trying to judge you specifically.
So I think that's where we may disagree.
Mm-hmm.
I think we're all giving prescriptions all the time. I don't think that we're sober enough about it. I think what you guys have done has been an amazing prescription for my life, right? I mean, everything about getting rid of tennis shoes. Like I've minimalized my tennis shoes. I've minimalized the amount of clothes I have. All these different things have been as prescriptions. I don't know if anyone grabs a nonfiction book or turns on a documentary like Minimalism and goes, I'm just going to watch this with some popcorn and not care about any of the implications this has for my personal life. I think people are looking for answers and looking for prescriptions.
Yeah. I want to get to the essence of it because I think sometimes we're saying something and we're using the same language, but we mean something different. When I talk about prescriptions, I think they can be really helpful in the sense of something that's mechanical. If you need to fix your bike or repair your car and you break out a manual, that's a prescription on how to repair the car, right? When it goes beyond the mechanical is, I think, when we often get stuck because instead of prescribing the actions, what we try to do with the minimalists is help people understand the essence of the problem. And through understanding the problem, the how-to begins to take care of itself. But what is much more powerful is having that deeper understanding of, oh, this is the actual problem. Because quite often we're talking about the solutions. The solutions become another problem because discipline or motivation isn't there. And we think, oh, well, I'm just never going to do it. Of course, you're going to do it, though, if you really understand the weight, the gravity of the problem.
Why versus what and how.
Yes.
That's the difference.
I think so, yes.
I like that.
I think it's important also to make a distinction between judging the person and judging the process. I can say, hey, your process is inefficient, or if this is your goal, you're following a process that's not going to lead you there. And we can evaluate a process without saying you are unworthy to exist or you are a horrible person for getting something having to do with the process wrong. And I think when discussions on judgment come up, there are two things that produce tension. On one side, the person who's issuing the prescription, it can be easy for them to maybe judge the person because there are inefficiencies in the process. That's also true for the person who's listening. Sometimes if you're listening to someone criticize your process, it can be easy to take that personally, even when it's not. Sometimes judgment is just critical thinking, but sometimes judgment is a mirror reflecting back the insecurities of the person. Sometimes it's just not an automatic thing.
We have a little segment on the podcast we call More About Less, where we read something as a jump-off point. Sometimes it's an article or a tweet. So I brought in this article from scarymommy.com, my favorite dating site.
Hey, I'm going to get a G.K. Chesterton quote in before you quote Eckhart Tolle, so we can keep our priorities in order. But
this is perfect because we're all pronouncing his name three different ways.
I think it's Eckhart Tolle, right? I thought it was Eckhart
Tolle.
Tolle? Okay, then I'm the odd man out. I should verify this.
But I say Tolle, so
okay,
but thankfully there is no right or wrong, so we're good.
The GK quote, and this captures kind of where I stand on like the beliefs, the opinions, the good, bad. He says, the purpose of an open mind is that of an open mouth, and it is to chew upon something solid. An old philosophy professor of mine, Timothy McGrew, he used to always say, keep an active mind rather than a passive mind. And I tend to like that a little bit better than open or closed because
I like that too, yeah.
I'm not open to everything.
Yep.
And I'm not closed to everything. But I choose to be active about it all. I choose to think critically and creatively about it all. But at the end of the day, I want to close my mouth and my mind on something substantial and chew on it.
Yeah, you don't want it to be porous. So let me get to this article here. I'm just going to read a few of them, and maybe we can agree or we can disagree on them. I'd like that too. So this is 100+ Eckhart Tolle /Tolle/Toll quotes that will seriously enlighten you, which is a bit hyperbolic there. I'm not going to read the whole article. We'll put a link to it in the show notes, but here are a few of the quotes. We'll start with the first one here. The past has no power over the present. Well, TK, you and I often say, you talk to me about this. You've never said it on the podcast, but how any of these little minimal maxims, these little profundities, these bromides that we toss about, they can be simultaneously true and radically untrue at the same time.
Yeah, I believe that every statement, no matter how much you love it, no matter how logical it is, can be made to sound absolutely ridiculous if you easily interpret it in a certain way. One day we should do a test where I can prove this. You give me any statement, and I can show you how someone can interpret that in a way that makes it sound ridiculous.
Let's do it right now.
But a better test that you can take it home is just put it on Twitter, and 20 people will show you.
All right, so the past has no power over the present moment. Well, in everyday practical life, that's certainly not true.
Yeah.
Because we stay stuck in the past. Now, of course, the past exists only in the present moment because there is no past in that respect. And I'm sure that's what he means. So
right. That's where you have to get curious, right? What does he mean? Because if I went up to Eckhart Tolle and was like, well, that's stupid because I have a cousin who's still living in the past today. Is Eckhart Tolle going to go, oh, bro, you blew my mind. I never thought about that. He'll probably say, yeah, I know people too who are in some meaningful sense stuck in the past. But let's go a little bit deeper.
Ruslan, here's another one for you. Some changes look negative on the surface, but you will soon realize that space is being created in your life for something new to emerge. Well, it seems like a bit on the a new take on that Chinese farmer parable in a way. Sometimes the worst things that happen to us, the worst suffering, ends up being the thing we're most grateful for.
Yeah, that's I like that quote. It's a good quote. Yeah. So, no discipline seems enjoyable in the moment, but then it leads to harvest. As the New Testament, Old Testament. I think that's in Proverbs. Yeah. So yeah, he's copying the Bible.
Let's jump around here. So let's see. Sometimes letting things go is an act of far greater power than defending or hanging on. Well, as the minimalist, it's pretty
difficult. Am I the only one that thinks these are just like all super fake deep quotes? Like, the skin is the skin until the skin leaves its body, and then it is no longer one with the skin. Like,
well, so I'll play Angel's Advocate with that.
Well, hold on real quick. Go ahead. We call those faux fundities, where someone's...
Faux fundities. Yeah, I like that. I'm going to use that.
It sounds profound at first, and then you listen again, and you're like, whoa, that doesn't make any sense. My daughter makes these up all the time. She has a great Twitter account. It's not her account, but we just like tweet the craziest shit that she says. And and she's full of faux fundities. She looked at me earlier this year and she goes, is the 4th of July on the 4th of July this year?
So, Angel's Advocate. First, a faux fundity is something that actually has no meaning. You're pretending to be saying something that has no meaning. That's not the concern or criticism here. And I hear this comes up a lot, which is why I'm going to play Angel's Advocate with it. The concern here is like, okay, I get what the brother's saying, but does it even need to be said?
Right.
It's like so basic and so obvious. I get that, but I also work with elementary school students and high school students. And one of the things they have taught me and they continue to teach me is that obviousness is relative to the hearer, right? Because when we listen to something and we go, okay, does that even need to be said? We're bringing a whole lot of life experience and a whole lot of accumulated wisdom into the moment. And so when someone says, hey man, sometimes working hard is a good thing, it sounds laughably obvious. But believe it or not, just like there are people every year who are born who need to be taught how to pronounce the words of the alphabet, there are thousands of people out there, millions of people who will hear that for the first time today. And they'll go, wow. That's really profound. And some people will hear it just because it came from you or just because it came from their brother. And so we can never say the obvious truths too much, because as angry as someone will get on Twitter for you daring to say something that they already knew, God forbid, there are always people out there who don't know it and who need to hear it from you. So I am a defender of stating obvious truths to every generation, because there are people born every day for whom those truths aren't obvious. If it's true, say it.
I love that. Let me just add something to this. And this may be controversial, and
go for it.
You guys may not like me for this, but I think the deeper issue, in my opinion, is that there's this spectrum between postmodernism, where there is no objective reality and everything is your truth versus my truth and your reality. And then there's the other end of the spectrum of like radical fundamentalism from a religious mindset. And I think I would say Jesus and the scriptures are going to lean more towards, hey, there's objective reality, there's absolute truth, there's morals, there's right and wrong. And I think the issue with someone like an Eckhart Tolle is that he's taking ancient truths that we've known. Like you said the thing, and I was like, oh yeah, I think that's a proverb, right? And it's being repackaged to a postmodern world where people don't want objective prescriptions. They don't want objective realities. They don't want to be told what is right and wrong. They want to live their truth in their reality. And I think that to me is the deeper underlying issue of why he's even so popular. Of how Kendrick goes from, I'm baptized, I'm going to church, I'm trying to marry my kid's mother, to faux realities. What did you call them?
Profundities.
Profundities. I'm going to kind of weasel my way out of whatever I don't really feel like doing in the moment because it's not conducive to how I feel about my reality. And so again, I don't mean to get super controversial, but this super duper postmodern, you are your truth, whatever you feel is real, flesh that out to its logical conclusion and some of the stuff that's happening in society right now. And there's some wonky stuff happening based on this whatever floats your boat, bro. Just do you and your truth. And so I think that's the deeper issue with the New Ageism. And why is Eckhart Tolle all of a sudden an authority? Oh, it's because people really don't want to deal with some of the objective ancient truths we've had all along, in my opinion.
We got so much more to talk about in Alabama, including a bunch of simple living segments. But first, what do you got for us?
Here's a minimalist insight from one of our listeners.
Hi, my name is Stephanie. I'm calling from Michigan, and I'm calling with a comment for 2, maybe 3 suggestions. The first one is there's a website and an app called Think Dirty, where it will list ingredients of makeup and kind of give a clean score based on their chemicals and everything that's inside them. So if you're looking for a clean alternative, you can scan the makeup products that you already have and kind of either score. If you're looking for more better alternatives with maybe better ingredients, they'll give you alternatives listed, and then you can actually shop right from their app as well. My second suggestion would also be called Good On You. It's where they list ecologically responsible and animal-friendly alternatives to makeup and clothing. So you can search on their website if you're looking for, lipstick, primer, foundation, everything like that. And my third suggestion would be, is my own little personal rule, is I typically have one quality makeup item for each, specific area. So if I'm looking for eyeliner, I have one quality eyeliner. If I'm looking for mascara, I have one mascara tube at a time. So this helps to cut down on my makeup. That way I don't have 17 different eyelash and eyeshadow palettes as well.
All right, before we get to our added value segment this week, let's say big thanks for Ryan interrupting his vacation to call in today. And also thanks to Ruslan for joining us today. You can check out his YouTube channel. We'll put a link to that in the show notes. Real quick, for right here, right now, here's one thing that's going on in the life of the minimalists. If you enjoy our podcast and you want some other questions answered about relationships or parenting or sex or wellness, my wife Bex has a podcast which I co-host with her. It's called How to Love. You can find it on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever you listen to podcasts. It's called How to Love. We'll put a link to that in the show notes as well. For our added value this week, since we argued quite a bit on the private podcast with Ruslan, and the argument stemmed from Kendrick Lamar's new album, which is called Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers. I thought I'd play my favorite song from that album. This is Rich Spirit. And this is my favorite Kendrick album. And I really like Good Kid, Mad City. I really like Damn. But there was something about this where there's this man who is clinging to his ego as it slips through his hands. And the tighter he holds on to it, the more it seems to slip away. And I think you'll certainly see that in this song. He's becoming enlightened, but doing so, he's grasping to not be enlightened. And you're seeing the dichotomy of both. Enjoy Rich Spirit. By the way, we got a bunch more surprise questions on the private podcast this week, like, how do you tell a narcissist to stop giving you gifts? Under what circumstances does it make sense to go into debt? What is one possession that you'd be better off without? Plus 7 different simple living segments and a million more questions. And if you want to hear all that, check out The Minimalists' private podcast. Visit patreon.com/theminimalists or click the link in the description to subscribe and get your personal link so that our weekly maximal episodes play in your favorite podcast app. You'll also gain immediate access to all of our archives, recordings of live events, weekly home tours, and our private community of thousands of minimizers like you. If you have a question or comment for our podcast, give us a call, 406-219-7839, or email a voice memo to podcast@theminimalists.com. You can follow The Minimalists on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter @The Minimalists. To get our podcast show notes in your inbox, sign up for our email list at theminimalists.com. On behalf of Ryan Nicodemus, TK Coleman, Malabama, Podcast Sean, Jordan O'More, Professor Sean, Social Jess, Danny Unknown, Post-Production Peter, Emma the Immigrant, and the rest of our team, I'm Joshua Fields Milburn. If you leave here today with just one message, let it be this: love people and use things, because the opposite never works. Thanks for listening, y'all. We'll see you next time.
Peace.
Every little thing you think that you need, every little thing you think that you need, every little thing that's just feeding your greed. Oh, I bet that you'd be fine without it.